So I add our welcome to everyone who's participating in our second webinar of Sisters on Holy Ground Beyond COP27. I'm Sister Pat Seaman, a Dominican sister of Adrian, Michigan, a member of Dominican Sisters International, and on the planning committee for this COP27 Sisters on the Ground. On behalf of the UISG and our partners, we are happy for your participation today as we hear from 4 of our sisters who participated in COP27. They have just returned, and so we're very happy to hear your reflections today. We have asked each of the 4 sisters to speak briefly on their experiences, their learnings, and priorities coming out of COP27 at Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. The sisters with us today are Sister Claudine Dumbai Suka, a sister of Notre Dame de Namur from the Democratic Republic of Congo. We have also Sister Paola Moji, a missionary sister of Comboni, representing Vivat International, an NGO at the United Nations with membership of over 25 religious congregations. Sister Gerstein Farnan, a Dominican sister of Adrian, serves as a UN representative for the Dominican Sisters International. And Sister Ernestine Lalo, a Good Shepherd sister from Madagascar, representing Unanima, a United Nations NGO focusing on children and women, especially those experiencing extreme poverty. We welcome and thank each of you. We thank our translators also, who will be helping us in English, Italian, and Spanish. So starting off this afternoon is going to be Sister Claudine.
Okay, so thank you very much. It is a pleasure for me to be here at this time with you. I was kind of surprised when I got the message that I have to attend to say something to you, because I supposed to teach my students, but anyway, I gave them a homework that they are doing now, that I have to join them immediately. Yes, I participate to the COP 27 in Sharm el-Sheikh. How did I get there? I am a sister of Notre Dame de Namur, a PhD in economic and agriculture. I did it in France. And I was appointed by the Conference Catholic Bishop to work to the Catholic University of the Congo that is located in Kinshasa. And I focus my research in ecology and environment. I do many things. So my goal is just to help the students to understand more the issue related to environment, to help them. So I do many actions like planting trees with them most of the time, or to take care of the plastic, to help them to do not put the plastic everywhere. So I do many things, and I think because of, and I teach also ecology and environment science at the university. And that's why the administrator of the university, the director, decided that I was selected only one to go to that COP 27. It was, I really loved to go to that meeting. There were many people, and I had a time to go to the negotiation as a scientific. That was my statute. And I had a time also to be with the youth, to listen to the youth, because they were there, many young, who are also wondering that. So those people, all the people are destroying everything. So what will happen for our future? What will happen? Are you listening to me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you well.
Thank you. So the youth were there, and they did many actions from everywhere. The thing, for example, I've met a young, I didn't know her, from the Congo, who was there. But that young was living with many other young from different countries, from the US, from Brazil, from Rwanda, so they were all together and talking, doing many exchanges. So they wanted that COP to hear to their cry. And besides that, I was a little bit shocked when I saw a group of handicapped people from Africa, the poor country. So I said, what is going on? Those handicapped, why did they come here? So people who can't walk with the wheelchair. I said, what is going on? So those people, I listened to them, they said, we are now the most affected by climate change. So when they gave the speech, they said, why? Because of the disaster. For example, where there is a flood in Africa, where there is all kind of disaster, the problem is cutting, for example, the road is, so we can't now, we don't have any good wheelchair. So now, right now, we cannot go somewhere because all the roads are not in the good condition, because we have heavy rains, we have, all the problems we have. So now we handicapped people, we have to stay home, because when you go out, the road is broken. There is no more roads. But a person who has his legs can go, or her legs can go easily to find a way, even though there are problems, even though the road is not good, can find and go where he wants to go. So that, in my testimony, that shocked me also.
Sister Claudine,
yes.
If I can interrupt, if you could make maybe one more closing comment, because we're on a timeline here.
Thank you.
With several more.
Thank you. And another thing was about negotiation. So the negotiation is not easy, because those people and developing country, they want, if they can repair damage and loss, and however they did decide. And another thing where I was, it was about talking about also adaptation. So you talk adaptation for all the world, but the conditions are different. So how can you talk about adaptation? That was also the issue was discussed there, and no answer. Another issue is the food agriculture with the food security, because no more rain, so the farms cannot plant on time. That was also a problem. So I think that is a little bit, but the most important that even people who are not really what they don't like really to listen to that. That the most thing that everyone is aware that the world will have to act. It is an emergency, but the problem is how we do it. In all the negotiation that was, they said that yes, fund will be there about, but most of the people, yes, Africans say, oh, okay, they clap. But besides that, they said, we hope that they are going to make it, because 2006, they talked about it, and in Paris, they talked, and nothing happened. So that is what people are a little bit afraid. However, some groups said yes, of course, but something is coming on. As they said that they will be making fund, giving the money, even though it is taking time, even though all the people are not agree, but we think that we are moving a little bit.
Thank you, Sister Claudine. Your energy and passion for engaging the youth and making sure they are aware of the connections between ecology and environment, and your sensitivity to people who are differently abled are really important aspects for us to consider. So thank you for your contribution right now. And our next presenter is going to be Sister Paola, and we welcome you to share your reflections.
Excuse me, Sister Pat, I am leaving you, please. May I leave you?
We regret that you need to go, but we know you have your students waiting, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Sister Paola. You need to unmute yourself.
Ricardo, could you please make host Paola, please?
It's okay, thank you. Sorry, I'm in my bedroom and the connection is not very stable. I'm in isolation at this moment, so I will put off the video if you don't mind. Sorry for this. And I just wish to share with you my point in relation to the worldviews. It's my first time at COP, and the theme of this COP was Together for Implementation. When I reached there and I saw these immense pavilions with many areas devoted to corporations and banks, my idea changed. I say maybe this is a COP together under the corporations. In fact, I could see two worlds within COP. On one side, the big business, the big business of fossil fuels, blue hydrogen, and the solutions that they were proposing were high-tech solutions, very expensive, digitalization, climate, smart agriculture, where you need isotope, it means atomic science, for instance, and even how to change the irradiation of clouds to reduce the temperature of the earth. You can imagine this solution. They can also sponsor nature-based solutions, mainly when they displace indigenous people and then they plunder their land and resources. So this worldview is focused on materialism and capitalism and is very much present at COP. The other world was the civil society. It was a a mosaic of organizations. There were environmental organizations, faith-based organizations, trade unions, youth, women, indigenous people, and many different voices and perspectives, but all of them people-centered. And I would say many of them spiritually focused. And this was my discovery at COP, the importance of spirituality, not religion. Somebody told me, not religion, because historically religions divide, but spirituality connects. And it was an Indian medical practitioner who told me this. So I would say even the radical feminists of the women and gender constituency, they were shouting. At times they were even a bit aggressive, but according to me, very active. You know, they ended up on Mount Sinai to appreciate the spirituality of that place. So what I discovered at COP was mainly the spiritual dimension. And the champions of spirituality at COP, according to me, were the indigenous peoples, more so indigenous women. And it was amazing to meet many of them, able to make a synthesis between traditional knowledge and modern science, to bridge and to connect past and future generations, and also living and not living beings. They speak of planetary health, not of human rights. They say, no, what do you speak about human rights? Everything is connected. So either we speak of planetary health or all of us are lost, you know? And they cherish the mystery of all that exists. Even the voice of the water, the color of the ice, and the stones. So they smile at high-tech solutions, and they propose the so-called old-fashioned organic agriculture, much more sustainable than the climate-smart agriculture of the high-tech. So that was a bit of my discovery at COP this year. And my frustration, a lost opportunity. In the end, no real decision on phasing out fossil fuels. So we can cure the symptoms, but not address the causes. And this was for me the failure of this COP. For sure, we got loss and damage, financial facilities, and the progress will come to make sure that the so-called least developed countries, they say so, may benefit of financial support to make up for the disasters that they are enduring. But this is just a symptom. We don't go to the root causes of the climate crisis. So I am frustrated. On the small size frustration, I would say food management was a lost opportunity. Imagine we had croissant in all the cafes where the grab and go, they were calling these points where you could take something. What was there as food? Croissant or European or I would say international food, nothing about local food like dates, for instance. You know? Energy management, disastrous. Air conditioning was so much that people got sick because of the extreme cold that we had to endure there. Waste management was just a facade. We had the differentiation of paper, cans, or plastic and general waste only at COP, and where the hotels, the posh hotels, were with many people from governments, I would say, but otherwhere in any other place in Sharm el-Sheikh, nothing of this. So I would say, yeah, a lot of talks, but little substance. And any other business, I would say we had one youth vocal, she was Vanessa Nyakate, but low profile. I attended to her talk. The one who really moved the COP was Lula, Ignacio da Silva Lula. When he arrived, there was an explosion at COP. And I was attending a conference on hydrogen, green hydrogen, is one of the fashion now. And I couldn't understand anything because the noise, the chants for Lula were impressive. They were covering everything. So the Lula was the star of COP, I would say, and the green energy of COP was the togetherness by the peoples, especially the civil society, when they gathered in Ramses Hall on the 17th of November, thousands of people fostering and expressing their energy in the People's Declaration. So that was something that I take with me in a positive sense. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Paula, for your insights, and particularly drawing upon the fact that spirituality seemed to underlie the meaning for so many people and the commonality there. And also you're pointing out the contrast between the two different worldviews. There may have been more, but basically the high-tech society versus the contributions that the indigenous peoples made. So really very valuable. Thank you so much. And our next person to share is going to be Justine Farnan. We know her as Dusty. Justine.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's really a pleasure and a privilege to be here, because it was a pleasure and a privilege to actually get to COP27. So excuse me for one moment here while I pick up my document so that I can speak to you a little bit more clearly. So I'm grateful for all your prayers and your support. I needed all of it, as this was my first COP and the significance of it in Egypt. A little bit different look at this is that I met many gracious, generous, and honestly hospitable people at COP. They made everything as smooth as possible for us. The registration took only 15 minutes, and checking in each morning was easy. Each of our badges had a barcode on it, and so we were checked in the morning and at night with our barcode. As Sister Paola said, there were many buildings. There were 5 buildings, 3 pavilions, as they were called, with different booths for multiple organizations, such as ILO, the International Labor Organization, and countries such as South Africa, Spain, and other organizations such as Bloomberg and banks, as Sister Paola said. Each of these organizations presented workshops or lectures or input on various topics, almost hourly the first week, and the second week about each morning, at least 2, if not 3, and the same in the afternoon. There was a water booth, a Justice Climate Action booth, ocean booth, and so many others. So much for us to take in and to try to learn from. I would say there were a few major themes. The first one was the major theme of just transition, which is really working with coal mines that are phasing out and nuclear plants that are being deactivated. There is definitely a need for just transition because coal miners were proud of their work despite the illnesses they had as a result of working in the mines. This is a big theme for climate change. It is also a framework of principles and strategies and practices that shifts society away from polluting, extractive economies to local, healthy, caring, and sharing economies. Just transition centers the leadership of frontline communities and workers working together to envision, organize, and build these new economies aligned with local ecosystems and the needs of those most harmed. Which led us to another theme of loss and damage. The establishment of loss and damage finance as a true pillar for climate action must be formalized. All modes of such finance must be designed so that they do not further prolong injustices, bring on more economic and non-economic loss and damage, and add burden to the most vulnerable countries and communities that worsen existing systemic issues. Nor should they be simply reallocated from existing adaptation and mitigation finance, but new climate financing is needed. As Sister Claudine mentioned, adaptation and mitigation are two sides of the same coin. Yes, we want to be water resilient. We know that 1.5 is a world where we need to live. We need water as a way for adaptation. Half of the world does not even have water sanitation. The Netherlands is willing and able, and next year with Tajikistan will hold a conference on water. It will be the first one in 47 years at the United Nations. They will meet March 22nd to the 24th in New York. We know that $5 million by the US anyway, was allocated to the International Office of Migration, multi-trust fund to deal with climate migration. We need support of financial aid to be part of the 30 outcome targets by 2030 to address adaptation gap. Another theme was food and insecurity, and I might just add gender. Changing climate is putting at risk our food systems. We need to place focus on committing to inclusivity. 18 million more women and men were hungry in 2018. But since then, an unconscionable rise in 2021 of 150 million more women than men were disproportionate food climate, greater inequity. We cannot reach any goal of hunger without this tremendous equity. Women are more vulnerable to climate and willing to go hungry in order to feed their families, and rural women less able to adapt to climate disaster. We all have the opportunity to build on COP26. Women and girls are disproportionate and potential for unfulfilled contribution to climate. And the fourth theme was methane. The United States and China met for the first time around methane, and they have drafted a plan to kind of counteract methane. We need to understand the importance of cutting methane. The top 3 methane producers are livestock fermentation, gas and oil emissions, and landfills, particularly in the United States. And on a positive note, the Holy See actually came for their first presentation at COP27. This was historic. They came because they have observer status at the UN, and the nuncio, Archbishop Nicholas, was able to talk at the opening of COP27. We were over 43 Catholic organizations that gathered with the nuncio twice. It was a wonderful meeting of these people. The Holy See together with some of the Catholic actors, wrote up a declaration for COP27, and I'll be happy to forward it to all of you. Thank you for this opportunity to be with you this afternoon and to go to COP27.
Thank you, Dusty, and for raising the multiple themes that COP identified or was working with. We really appreciate your drawing our attention to the engagement of the Vatican at this COP. And also, personally, I'm so grateful that you talked about just transition and the importance of that, because it affects so many communities who are dependent on different kinds of mining. So we move from Dusty, and we are now going to call on Sister Ernestine for her reflections. Go ahead, Ernestine.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I apologize because you will suffer a little to try to understand me, because my English is not so good. So I prefer to speak in French, but it's okay. I will try.
Thank you.
I am Ernestine Lalo, member of the congregation of Our Lady of Charity of the Good Shepherd. I'm from Madagascar. I went to COP27 with the Malagasy government team. I was also there as a representative of my congregation, which is actively involved in the fight against climate change. This was my first time at the COP. My experience in Sharm el-Sheikh was extraordinary. I think it was a great success as a global event. I think that through all the negotiations, all the side events, everyone had a voice. It is an event rich in knowledge about different topics: greenhouse gas emissions reduction, finance, adaptation, mitigation, loss and damage, gender, actions of feminist leaders, young activists against climate change. I presented on aquaponics activities during COP27. Said events, aquaponics on 11 November in the pavilion, the Francophonie. So allow me to explain to you just a little what is it. Aquaponics is a self-sustaining closed-loop production system that combines aquaculture, the breeding of fish or aquatic organisms, and hydroponics, the cultivation of plants on the nutrient-enriched waterbed in fresh water. In this type of aquaponic system, wastewater from aquaculture is not dispersed into the environment, but is redirected to the roots of the plants. The nutrients supplied to the plants are therefore from a sustainable, productive, and non-chemical source. This is a very effective way to contribute to the fight against food insufficiency and the agriculture's empowerment of women and girls. 0 kilometer family self-production at home, in communities, schools, clinics, etc., in urban and rural areas, improving resilience and food security, quantity and quality, income generation. It was also a time for opening experience for me to have more international relations. I had the common concern of all participants about climate change, the desire of everyone for a global solidarity, even if it was difficult to find consensus. It was a unique event that made me understand more about the seriousness of global warming and the importance of implementing the COP26 declaration. I attended the opening of the World Leaders segments. I was very impressed by the opening speech of the leaders. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that we are on the road to climate health with our foot on the gas. We were heard several times during COP27 that the impact of the climate change are hitting many countries around the world. Madagascar is among the most affected countries. I am a witness to what the Malagasy people are experiencing. Many people are forced to migrate. This causes race wars, insecurity, especially for children, girls, and women who are exposed to all kinds of dangers. The Egyptian president said that leaders must go beyond words to address the situation. COP27 must be a COP of actions. It is an urgent call that requires solidarity and responsibility from all, starting with ourselves and at world levels. I am very happy and proud of our church that continues its witness in the heart of the world today through the concrete action of Laudato Si. The church is the prophet of our world today. As a prophecy, the adhesion of policy to join the United Nations Framework Convention and the Paris Agreement. It is an important platform that must tell the trust and lead everyone to the continued work. To encourage our work by his testimony and his will to recreate and restore life, dignity humans with God the Creator. It is a space to advocating for the weakest, the defenseless, the excluded, the inert, and the rejected. It to be able to continue to make now the inseparable relationship between God the Creator, human beings, the earth, and all the cosmos. The protection of the environment and the protection of human rights should not be separated. And thank you so much for your effort to understand me.
Ernestine, we thank you for your very comprehensive insights into the different themes of COP, and particularly around foods. For me, your comments around food sufficiency and insufficiency, and also the disproportionate impact that climate change has on women and girls move me deeply. So we thank each of our presenters, Sisters Claudine, Paula, Derstine, and Ernestine, and now it is your time as participants. I invite you to take a moment or two of silence to reflect on what you heard from our four sisters who shared their experiences, and then to put your questions or reflections into the chat box, because Julia will then lead us in some dialogue and conversation with the speakers on your reflections and questions with them. So let's take at least a moment or two of silence, and then please put your reflections and questions into the chat box so we can continue there. So we heard a lot that stirred us, both intellectually and our hearts. So Julia, I invite you now to facilitate our dialogue.
Thank you, Sister Pat. So one of the questions, the first question in the chat box is that we've heard about many frustrations, and I think that's something we can all kind of strongly echo, that sense of difficulty throughout the days and weeks of COP27, that sense of struggling to kind of find reasons to hope. But Gemma asks our speakers, what was one thing that really brings you hope, that brought you hope, and what can we hold on to for hope as we look to the future? So I don't know if anyone, if any of our speakers would like to answer that question.
So what brings me hope is that for the first time, at least from the US perspective, the US has really opened up the possibility of giving more money to the developing countries so that they can possibly move forward, especially around the whole issue of loss and damage. The United States has promised at least $55 billion towards loss and damage, as well as adaptation and mitigation. We know that that is just a drop in the bucket from a country that has a $23 trillion budget. But at the same time, we must, since we have made the commitment, we must go after our countries and make sure that they promise and deliver on their promise.
Thank you, Sister Dusty. And I think you've touched on a really important point there, which is we can find hope, but what it's going to come down to is implementation and the follow-up from this COP and holding our countries, our leaders to account. So a couple of other questions from the chat. Somebody says they really liked what we said about the spiritual journey. So how can we continue on this spiritual journey so that we're really having an impact on the problem of climate change? Where does this spiritual path take us next? Any one of the speakers who would like to answer, please do just chime in.
Well, I was most probably the one who mentioned this spiritual the importance of spirituality in addressing the root causes of the climate crisis. And it's a totally different worldview which we need to nourish. And I think what is needed is a listening heart and this deep respect for the indigenous wisdom, which actually demands to be recognized also as science. No? I think it's a conversion starting from ourselves so that we don't look down at those backward communities, but we treasure their knowledge. I was reading a book from an anthropologist, is Philippe Descola. He said, we assume that Amazon, by centuries of indigenous presence, in a way which was respectful of the rhythm of nature. In Tuscany, we have a place called Val d'Orcia. It's not wild. It's the outcome of centuries of cure by the indigenous people. So we have to regain this sense of communion with nature and listening more to the wisdom of the indigenous communities. This is my view.
Thank you very much, Sister Paula. I really love this idea of a listening heart. And for those of you who don't know me, I just want to mention that I'm the project coordinator of Sisters Advocating Globally, which is the advocacy project at UISG. And I do just want to take this opportunity to connect what Sister Paula just said with the UISG statement, Sisters for the Environment, which was published on November 3rd, because one of the key points from that statement is integrating vulnerability from the margins, integrating the voices that are not often heard, and integrating them not just as voices from the outside, but really as a central structural part of our systems for change. So I just want to say thank you, Sister Paula, for echoing that and for reinforcing that with your experience. Another question from the chat is a more practical and technical question. What can we do to affect our governments in their response to food and water insecurity, especially because this affects so many women and children? So of course, this is the really difficult advocacy question. Where can we start holding our governments to account, as Sister Dusty was saying?
Well, I think one place to start is that we all become familiar with what in this case where I come from, with the United States and what they said they would do. And so one way is to stay in touch with John Kerry, who is the special climate envoy for President Biden. I think that's really important. And by staying in touch, I mean on a regular basis. How many times are we going to write to him or call to him and give an update, ask for an update? Where are we? How are we doing? And also we in the US, our advocacy is to approach our Congress, because it's our Congress that will decide to release all these funds. So that's one thing I can say as a way to keep up with the outcome of COP27 from the, unfortunately, the largest economic country in the world. And therefore we must, what do we say? We have this expression, keep our foot to the ground and make sure that it happens.
Thank you, Sister Dusty, and definitely you highlight something so important, which is keeping that contact alive with decision makers as much as possible, and of course following that money trail. Where is it leading us? Who has the power to make those investments? I don't know if anyone else wants to respond to that point. Of course, the question of impacting national decision making is so different in different countries, in different contexts. I just want to leave that open for a moment in case anyone else wants to respond. And otherwise, oh, sorry. I thought I heard someone.
I'm just going to say that I will send to UISG, number one, the declaration that the Holy See put out on the last day of COP. Many of us got to sign it because there are some things there that give some practical application. But I will also send you some references to UISG for possible follow-up from an advocacy perspective.
Thank you, Sister Dusty. That would be wonderful. And I hope we can continue forging this path together. So another question from the chat, we talk about supporting the most vulnerable countries. And Isabel says, I think supporting these countries is not just about the impact of climate change, but it's also about education. So how do we help in that way? How do we provide that type of support that goes beyond just responding to the impact?
Would you repeat the question, please?
Of course. So the question is, we talk about helping the more vulnerable countries, but what does this type of help consist of? Because I think it's not necessary just to help with the impact of climate change, but also at the level of education.
I don't want to do all the talking, but I would suggest that maybe one thing we could do is invite some of the countries that we are aware of that are most vulnerable to speak, get connected to them, especially the people in the Amazon, where the indigenous people live. And if anybody needs any help with doing that, as a representative at the UN in New York, and working very collaboratively with Peru, Brazil, and Ecuador, I'd be happy to share some of those resources where you can actually ask someone from those regions to talk to you. Another thing might be to address if you have NGOs at the UN, or even if you don't, you know, all the member states are in New York City. So there's no reason why you can't contact them. All their addresses are available. They have their own blue book of a directory. And I would really suggest that people, you know, write to the countries that are most vulnerable, and ask them, how are they doing? What can you do to respond? And can we have a Zoom call together? Can we have a conversation? And would they direct you to some of this, to the indigenous in their area? And all the women that were on this call today all have access to other women who would probably give some good input into that question.
Thank you.
I would just add here that the value of education wherever we are, whether we're in educational institutions, or in our parishes, or if we have reading groups, whoever are our neighbors or our opportunities to engage with people to further the exploration of what climate change is doing on the ground to so many people, and just try to keep really keeping this issue in front of us. It's not just an issue, it's a crisis. And so, I mean, and particularly from a faith perspective or spiritual perspective, what we could do to help our parishes become more aware of the crisis that we're in.
Thank you. And We have some great comments in the chat as well as questions. I'm reading ongoing collaboration with other local and national groups working for climate change and climate justice would be effective action to keep our respective governments accountable for what they committed to at COP27. Using our own international networks to inform ourselves about the realities on the ground, and especially, as you were saying, Sister Pat, evidence of the impacts of climate injustice on those less fortunate. All of these are strategies that we can be looking to as we follow up on this COP. I think we have one more question in the chat, which is, in addition to meeting with the Vatican delegation, did any of you have opportunities to speak with or lobby other governments as well?
No, I didn't have any chance to lobby any other government. I got in touch with the European Union, but I don't think it's easy to lobby. We have possibilities in Brussels, and I think we'll follow up as African Europe Faith and Justice Network, for instance. And I was there at COP representing I was one of the delegates of Vivat International, so I feel that as NGO and faith-based organization, if we liaise with each other, if we really foster collaboration, we can make a difference, because we are bridging the gap between the grassroots level and the decision-making bodies. What I feel is that really we need to go beyond barriers of prejudices. And my lesson at the COP was with these radical feminists. And I feel that they gave an incredible contribution. The language, I repeat, their language for me was a bit too aggressive, but they were keeping up informed continuously with their chat so that we could follow the issues and make pressure. And they're making pressure, and they were making pressure. And I believe that this is the way to go. So I hope that each one of us in the environment where we are, we can foster this collaboration across the board and prejudices.
Thank you so much, Sister Paola. And I just want to say thank you again for echoing another really fundamental point of what the whole advocacy project at UISG really set out to do in 2020, which is to make visible and to act upon this sense that sisters are very uniquely placed at this time and on the global development stage to be a bridge, to bridge a gap, and to create that bridge in both directions. So to bring the voices of some of the world's most vulnerable and marginalized communities to the global advocacy stage, to decision makers, to those in power, to our leaders, and also conversely, to feed back to ensure that decisions made globally are properly implemented on the national and local level. So I just want to really emphasize that point, because we know that there is such a valuable role to play there. Another question that a couple of other questions actually I think have arrived in the chat. In the meantime, I'm going to carry on, Sister Pat, until you tell me to stop. So a couple more questions that I'm seeing. From the US, we have a question that says, it seems that both our bishops and many clergy are out of touch with the needs that we are speaking about. Does anyone have ideas of how to best educate and support them in a shift in worldview? Such a difficult question, of course, about getting our own house in order. Where would we start with that?
Well, I think right now, all of us have the opportunity to follow up on Laudato Si Action platform and find a way into the parishes and into the local priests and see if they would be willing and be open to it. But there needs some education on this as well. But I think that might be one potential avenue to address some of these issues that we address even at COP27.
I agree with Darstine. The Laudato Si movement has been doing mammoth tasks at parish level. And at least in Italy, I've seen the changes they have been able to implement even in areas where parishes were absolutely cut off from any environmental concern. So I'm hopeful about this.
Thank you. And another question looking to the future as well. So there are lots of issues that we've talked about today, lots of different topics, lots of different priorities, but I want to ask all of you actually to respond to this question. If there is one thing that we would take away from today, what would you say is really the key, the most important aspect, the key priority to follow up on? Sister Paola.
Our spiritual journey. Our spiritual journey makes us political women, and with a sense of direction. I was amazed by the chief of the German delegation. At the end of the talk of a young girl from Ghana during the concluding briefing on the 18th, he said, we have power here. We have power, of course, people of power sitting there. But then he added, we don't have power, though, to change physics. So no conversion, because in the end, this COP didn't accept to phase out fossil fuels. So they have power that they don't want to change. And it's a spiritual issue that needs to be sorted out there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sister Dusty, what's your key priority, your key takeaway?
I think the key takeaway for me is learning more about just transition. How are we going to move equitably from fossil fuel use, coal mining, and those kind of issues, or nuclear deactivation? How are we going to really help promote a just transition? Because workers need to work, and countries need certain kinds of things to help them survive the cold and the heat. So how are we going to do that? And so I think just transition is one of the most important aspects that I learned at COP27 and hope to follow up on in some ways.
Thank you very much. And Sister Ernestine, what would be your key takeaway, your key message as we look to the future?
My key message is just I want to say the solidarity is our power. So together with the world and the church, we will go ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Sister Pat.
Yes. Okay, thanks, Julia. Thank you so much to our presenters and to all of us who are participating in this. I think we are hearing a very strong call to all of us to really claim our moral responsibility as women of the church to respond to this issue. And so I now hand this over to Sister Sheila Kinsey for our closing remarks.
Thank you very much for such a wonderful presentation. Your presence at the COP spoke volumes, and your ability to share your wisdom and your experience in such a delightful and challenging way is very, very much appreciated. So you're carrying on the theme of delivering for the people and the planet, and then highlighting what was happening in Africa. So Cardinal Parolin, when he was addressing the assembly, again, because the Vatican has made a commitment to COP21 to carry forth, the agreement to really deal with the climate crisis. Their witness value spoke volumes. But he stressed the importance of education on integral ecology. And we know that spirituality is foundational to this, as is said in Laudato Si number 9. But Cardinal Parolin then brings to mind our lifestyles being important, fostering a new pattern of development of sustainability based on care, which you've all talked about, fraternity and cooperation for all of humankind as a way of strengthening the covenant between human beings and the environment. Many of us participated in the Africa Dialogue sessions, a series of 5 sessions, which was a unique experience for us, where we've had really education about the major issues to be faced at the COP: fault solutions, finances, agriculture, adaptation, and whole migration, and then focusing on loss and damage. And they didn't know that this was going to carry, and it carried so well. That young woman, that young girl from Ghana, holding up the sign about the fact that we have to pay for the consequences of our actions. So that was so well orchestrated. I think the movement of the spirit, for sure, at this groundbreaking time. Thanks for sharing and making the connections then to the Sisters for the Environment and integrating voices from the margins. And I know that some of you even brought your statement there to share with others. So we appreciated that connection. Again, we're in this together. And then I think we value what's going ahead. So you've helped prepare us for the next COP, the COP15 on the biodiversity. And things are already being planned for that. And we are encouraging you, if you would care to really continue on this journey and maybe even be present in Canada. The theme there is ecological civilization, building a shared future for all life on Earth. Again, moving forward in a dynamic manner. So already the Dicastery Promoting Integral Human Development has the Ecological Task Force, and they have been busy preparing for this COP in Canada, and you are invited to participate in any way to follow up with this time. They will have a kind of a faith session. They will be involving many faith leaders already. They have 30 to 40 that have been engaged in this process. They will be talking about what events that they can plan, trying to coordinate those events, how to really have some side events, and communication about this. In fact, there'll be meetings at about 5 o'clock Rome time for anyone that wanted to join them in future planning for that. It's Eastern time is 11 o'clock for the US. Also, we give you the link if you care to join that. So this is exciting, very exciting. And the movie that, the letter is continuing to be shown elsewhere and raising a lot of enthusiasm to carry forth what we need to do in terms of embracing the margins and embracing our responsibilities. So meanwhile, we'll continue on with Laudato Si Action Platform, promoting that, seeing as many of you to be involved as you care to, because it's the collaborative. It's the tipping point that we're after to make a difference. And we need to do this together, as all of you were saying. On January 17th, we'll have another webinar from Sowing Hope for the Planet, in which we will be following up on what we've been able to do since the both COPs and see if we can find some ideas to go forward together. We will continue to engage new and existing partners with a focus on the statement, Sisters for the Environment, Integrating Voices from the Margins. And we'll share this statement again at COP15 in Canada in order to expand our vision and engage others in this whole process of making a difference where we are. Again, the 3 areas that are mentioned are integrating responses to climate change and biodiversity loss. Again, the connection between the 2 COPs, integrating care for people and our planet, and integrating vulnerable from the margins. You'll continue to receive newsletters and updates through Sowing Hope for the Planet, JPIC Roma, and UISG's mailing lists, because we need to be energized to go forward, because we have to be in here for the long haul. Yet we know this is urgent and we have a few years only to deal with this crisis that we have. So thanks for your faithful witness and clearly audacious advocacy efforts in Egypt. And we will be praying now for our involvement in the upcoming COP 15 on biodiversity and in Canada. So certainly we're going to be in this together and we're going to be in the same boat and we're going to make it to the other side. God bless. Thank you.
So thank you, Sister Sheila, for doing such a wonderful closure for us and reminding us of all that is coming before us and the urgency. Just want to take this opportunity to again, particularly thank the UISG and all of your team for picking up this advocacy and really making it possible to support the sisters who were able to attend COP27, for all of the work, the virtual prayers, the statement, the follow-up that will be continuing. So on behalf of all women religious and all persons of faith who have had a part in preparing participation in COP27 and the upcoming COP15 on biodiversity in Montreal in December, we thank you. So thank you all for participating and for the wonderful questions and comments. And to our presenters and our translators, again, our gratitude. Thank you all.